Hi everyone, welcome and thank you for joining us here today. We're excited to be the platinum sponsor for this event and present e-learning advancements, emerging technologies and adoption strategies. My name is Corey Burford and I am the Managing Director of Skytrust Risk Management Software. Joining me today is Doug Brown, our e-learning associate. Doug has over 25 years experience in the design and development of e-learning training modules. His leading edge knowledge of e-learning software has enabled clients to successfully implement e-learning projects across a diverse range of industries. In today's presentation, Doug will provide an insight into the latest e-learning advancements and discuss the issues that may affect your adoption strategy. So thank you, Doug.
Thanks, Corey. Over the last decade, we've witnessed an increase in the uptake of e-learning technology, from basic multimedia to today's interactive and device responsive solutions. Compliance and induction modules can now be delivered to anyone 24/7 via the internet or company networks. As e-learning is often described using technical jargon, I would like to start with an overview of the common e-learning terms and components. On this next slide, we'll look at some of the common terms that we're handy to use in the industry, and you're going to find whenever e-learning pops up, these are the words that are going to be introduced. So today, let's have a quick look at them. LMS, or Learning Management System, that controls your e-learning system. It's a terminology you'll find all vendors are going to use. It's the major component which drives any e-learning within the company. In addition to that, you'll also hear terms of an LRS, or a learning record store. We'll cover this in a bit more detail as we go forward, but that's the newest technology and it works alongside the LMS. Let's have a look at some of the other industry standards as next part. SCORM. SCORM is really a technical term that's been around for almost 2 decades now. And during those 2 decades, we've moved forward in the adoption of multimedia into now what we call e-learning. SCORM as a standard has remained, and the LMSs that you'll purchase and use will be able to work with SCORM. However, the standard is getting very old, and because the standard is getting old, some of the communication it has with modern technology is limited. The new players in the field are XAPI, otherwise known as the Experience API. Now, the Experience API uses a complete new architecture. That's one of the words you're going to hear talked about a lot. It's the Experience API, or else it's the XAPI. Now, what does this mean to us? It's a technical term, but it's the word that's going to be used in all new publications. We now have an experience model LMS. We're referring to XAPI. The third term, which we're going to cover, is CMI5. Now, CMI5 is the latest communication protocol that effectively, joined with XAPI, allows you to do what SCORM used to do and a whole pile of additional items. So as you can see, Corey, the advancements have been quite extensive.
Thanks, Doug. And where do you see the benefits of these technologies, and where do you believe and what will be considered to be reasonably practicable for WHS in the future?
It's a good question, Corey. The best adoption strategy is going to take into consideration the strengths and opportunities. In the end, we must consider how practicable the alternatives are to ensure the best solutions for WHS training. When considering this, we must face the issues which relate to the adoption of the available standards. So in this slide, let's have a quick look at comparing the benefits and limitations of the standards we mentioned previously. Here again, we see SCORM, XAPI, and CMI5. So there's 3 standards. What's the advantages and disadvantages, and why should we look at them? Start with SCORM. You're going to use the terminology, you've heard it around the industry, and clearly SCORM is the buzzword when it comes to e-learning. But it's getting older, as I mentioned before. There are some other very severe limitations of SCORM. It was designed to launch modules or e-learning content through an LMS. Unfortunately, content which is not directed through the LMS won't be able to work using SCORM. Today, we not only use the browser, but we also use devices, iPads, telephones, or other devices to communicate with the internet. The SCORM standard does not allow you to do that. Also, we might be online and then the next moment lose connection, be offline. We have to have this continuous protocol of SCORM running, otherwise the LMS won't work. So it's good, it works, it's appropriate, but unfortunately, it's got to the point now where we need to look at something else. So the XAPI, what does that mean to us? The XAPI, or Experience API, is really designed to overcome the restrictions of the older SCORM standard. In particular, it doesn't have to run through a browser. It can run as an app on a device. It can run offline, which we can clearly do on apps on telephones, on tablets. We don't need to be online to use the app. We don't need to be online to use XAPI, a huge advantage. Also, if we're using the broadcast around the world, we don't want to have a host located in America when we're listening to the LMS output through Europe, because there'll be delays. We would like to have a local host. XAPI can do it, SCORM doesn't. So there's a numerous number of advantages that require XAPI to be adopted within your LMS. CMI5. Well, CMI5 is really allowing the XAPI to do what SCORM used to do, plus a whole pile of more things. So the combination that is really on the market, using the little icon in the bottom, is CMI5 XAPI together. What that's saying is that is the new way of connecting. On the right-hand side of the screen, you can see I've got a graphic with a whole pile of Internet of Things connections. The internet no longer is just looking at words on browsers. The internet can be used to communicate, to have remote sensing, or in fact, right into what we now call the Internet of Things. Microsoft, Amazon Web Servers, Google, they're all using devices now to run on the Internet of Things. So just as SCORM used to run on a browser, we now need to look much wider to see what impact we can now use the training for. So the content can be distributed everywhere, providing we have XAPI and CMI5 adopted by the LMS. So the choice, and what does this mean to you? When you look at an LMS provider or somebody who provides e-learning, we need to ask two questions. One, does it use the newer standard? And does the LMS work well with the newer standard? If both of those things are true, then we've got the leading edge technology, and that's where the future lies. When you purchase an online module to plug into an LMS, it would be ideal if it could work with the combination of XAPI and CMI5, but most of the modules available today still use the old SCORM standard. If we were to use an old SCORM standard module in a current modern LMS, you'd have to be using a browser and you'd not be able to do it through apps or offline. So there's quite a migration between SCORM now and those new standards. Why are we talking about the technical jargon? I think the fairest thing to say is that's what you're going to see in the publications. People are going to talk about SCORM compatibility, XAPI and CMI5, or the new jargon term, the Experience API. It's called Experience API because what happens, it doesn't only record the start and the end of an e-learning program. It can record the fact that you clicked something for 10 seconds, or it can record that you went off and watched a video somewhere, or maybe you downloaded a PDF somewhere and browsed it. All of those things can be included into the XAPI and can be recorded with modern LMSs. From an e-learning viewpoint, and using adult learning methodology, we realize that most training, most learning, 90%, some people would say, occurs outside of formal training. So because of that, we really need to try to capture some of that data that's going to be used in those areas. So as you can see, Corey, we may need to adopt several new standards moving forward.
Thanks, Doug. And what learning should be considered to get the best outcomes for an adoption strategy?
I think the best approach, Corey, would be to consider what your expectations are, you and your organization. E-learning can be deployed many ways depending on the outcomes that you're required. It also depends on your existing knowledge of e-learning, and this will be enhanced with ongoing consultation with e-learning industry specialists, where you can have a trust relationship to really work out what we need to move forward. This next slide highlights some of the issues that you need to consider. There's a number of points on the slide, as you can see, but I'll go over them quickly, but really I would rather talk about what they mean as we go through them. Your current deployment of e-learning, what do I mean by that? When you're deploying e-learning already in your organization, we've found quite a number of organizations who have jumped in, we'll say early, but it was probably late on their behalf several years ago, have now discovered that the standards no longer work for them, or they can't import content. Existing limitations and requirements have been overlooked and they need to change. So you need to consider what is your state of knowledge just now, what is your state of deployment just now. System integration. In the new technology, you'll be able to integrate with other HR information systems or other risk management software systems, where if somebody was to lodge an issue as an incident or a report or something on a risk management system, it can also be recorded directly through to their new LMSs, in which case, when you do your data analysis, you can see not only have they completed courses, but in fact, they've been using some additional software. Future expansion. It's quite clear that as we move forward into the future, new technology will be used, new names will come up, and the question needs to be asked, how well is this existing technology going to remain? What I can say is that if we see the current adoption rates within both developers of e-learning and LMSs, that's what everybody is now moving forward to. There are now consortiums around the world where they're trying to make sure that once and for all, there is an international agreement between how these standards are used. There are also forums and cohort groups covering XAPI and CMI5. There's one launched this evening in America, which has got the latest incarnation. And that particular technology will be enhanced for that reason. So it's not a matter of waiting for somebody to control this. It's not a vendor-specific control. It's an industry initiative, it's an industry adoption, and the vendors of products and e-learning content, they automatically are going to have to be involved with this. So you have to keep up with industry terms. So in summary, Corey, adoption strategies should always be matched with the desired outcomes rather than just off-the-shelf solutions, and you need to keep up with the industry trends.
Thanks, Doug, for sharing your insight. We believe that the advancements in e-learning technologies will continue and will give businesses better outcomes. Good material with ease of access, such as QR codes, mobile access, low-cost delivery models for significant reach to share your courses or inductions with your employees, contractors, or guests will provide better results in learning or inductions and understanding. Big data to analyse with more assistance from machine learning, and we're excited about the future. So thank you, everyone.